This episode is proudly supported by Westholme Australian Wagyu. Whether you're a chef or just love going to restaurants, you know the best ingredients are everything, especially when it comes to beef. Westholme, based in Queensland and the Northern Territory, Australia, is working with the land to create nature-led Australian Wagyu. They steward 16 million acres of rangeland, guided by the natural ecosystem where cattle graze and forage on native grasses for the first few years of their lives. The result is high-quality Wagyu beef that reflects the terroir of Northern Australia. Westholme believe that when nature leads, flavour follows. Learn more at westholme.com.
Cafes are going to be the last thing that you give up on, and your morning coffee or your eggs on toast. It is tough out there, it's really tough. And if we continue just to put our prices up with no thought of those who have supported us over so many years, I think, we'd start to see the effect.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Dirty Linen. My name is Dani Valent, and I am really happy to be with you today. We love a return guest on this podcast, and today's guest has been on the show about a year ago. I was surprised to look back and realise that it had actually been that long, but we all know how time flies. Kieran Spiteri is part of Yolk Group, which owns a bunch of cafes in Melbourne. I wanted to get Kieran back on the show because we were chatting a little while ago for a story I was writing, I think about, the state of hospitality and how tough things are. And Kieran was keen to tell me that, there are things that people can do, levers that can be pulled, ways that you can make this game work. And I thought, well, Kieran, let's get you back on the show to clue everybody else in to your strategies and ways of doing business. Welcome back to Dirty Linen.
Thanks, Dani. Thanks for having me back. I really appreciate it.
Let's start with your new cafe because, there's nothing that says confidence more than opening a new business. So tell us about it and tell us why you've done it.
Well, first of all, we love the site in Westgar. So for those who are listening and who might know the old Barry Cafe, old time favourite of everyone. I think it was Melbourne's best cafe a while back, and we all live in the north there, and we were frequent visitors of it back in the day. And the opportunity came up for us to be able to purchase that business. And it just screams everything that we're about. It's a beautiful corner space, obviously the old building. And we really just thought we could do that area justice by bringing, what Yolk Group does to that area again. We're definitely going for a total different pitch to what we've done previously, which is a little bit nerve-wracking, but really exciting for us. We'll probably even venture into the night or evening space. But I think, to be honest, we just really love that. Not only do we love that area, but we love that building and what it represents in Westgar.
Yeah, it is a pretty iconic spot. And I'm excited to hear that you're going to do nights. Perhaps just give people a little rundown of the rest of Yolk Group, the different businesses, and then let's talk strategy.
Sure. Okay, so we own with Ophelia opening in September. That'll be our fifth business. So we have 3 cafes, a sandwich window, and then a catering business as well. So we have Terra Twilight, which is located in Collingwood on the corner of Johnson Street and Bedford Street. We then have Tinker in Northcote up on High Street. We also have Convoy, which is on the corner of Pascoe Vale Road and the Strand in Moonee Ponds. Terra Twilight also has a catering wing to it or arm to it that runs out of the back of our sandwich shop, which is Hi-Fi, which is on Smith Street there.
I didn't realise you did catering out the back of Terra Twilight, but that doesn't mean that I can get a bucket of broth to take home because I'm a little bit addicted to the broth and the bowls there.
I won't lie to you. We're actually going to put it. We've been trialing it at the moment, and we've figured out a way that customers can buy it. Catering customers can buy it, and we can deliver it to offices and make sure it's hot, and they can serve themselves little broths. So I probably could help you out if you need.
Well, I mean, I'm in an office. It is just like a desk in a room in a house, like Seref. As I look around, I reckon I could find a spot for some broth.
Yeah, we could sort you out a couple of litres, I reckon.
Yeah, it could get me through.
Yeah.
So, Kieran, we chat a lot on this podcast about, the back end of hospitality businesses and how people can make things work. The kinds of things we hear about are skills shortages, problems retaining staff, costs are going up every which way you look. The burden of compliance is huge. People are coming perhaps, but they're spending less. I would love to know how you manage to crack the code of running profitable cafes in this environment.
Okay. I'll try and break it down for you if I can. And I just want to start by, we don't always get it right, do you know what I mean? So we're as good as we can be sometimes. We also can make some royal mistakes. But I'm also very intrigued to speak to you because, I listen to a lot of those episodes about, is hospitality broken? And I don't think it is. I think, we're in the midst of creating obviously new menu and new food, and some of the produce and some of the things that I'm tasting at the moment, and even, eating out, the experiences that Melbourne offers, hands down, just amazing. And I'd say, especially in the cafe space where we're world leaders, I think the challenging part is the constraints that we now have to operate under, and probably owners or their ability to really understand what those true costs are to them and what their hospitality businesses look like on a week-to-week basis. And I'm happy to share with you, in the case of, for instance, Terra Twilight, we had to take a business that went broke 6 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, to the point where the doors would almost have to close. And fortunately, I got to take that business over. But within a year's time, I found myself back in the same space, like front of house, or what you would perceive as a customer. The business was running and striving and being super successful. But if you looked at my books and my numbers behind, they were just an absolute mess. And not till I got my business partner, Ben Argentino, on board with me, and he had the expertise in the numbers side of things, did everything really start to work and grow on both sides. And then ever since then, we've continued to grow and grow our financial sort of prowess, or our ability to understand how businesses operate, which has then put us, in such a good position that allows us to continue to grow.
Wow, Kieran, thanks for sharing that, because I think that's pretty brave to say that, you didn't have all the answers at that stage. I mean, then you'd already had, years in hospitality. You were very experienced at running the front of house. People would have thought you were a person that would have the answers, but you're telling us that, there was strength in that partnership that took you to a better place.
Absolutely. And it's, and along the way, and even in the journey we're on at the moment, is that at every stage you are learning more and more about the industry that we work in, or how to better operate, your existing businesses and then future businesses down the line. And I think that's maybe what you're seeing too, a lot of at the moment in hospitality, is it's sort of, sometimes it can be smoke and mirrors, a place can be such a fad and it can be so busy, and then 18 months later that venue's gone and everyone's like, oh my God, what was wrong with that? I think that educational piece, or the ability for business owners to grow and understand how to really operate a profitable business, within the constraints that we have to sort of work under and are guided under. I think that piece is something that's missing within the industry,
Well, can you give us that piece?
For a small fee, no. Look, so what I've learned, or what we've learned as a group, and what I was taught, is that I'll go back. So if I talked about people that I'd worked with previously, or worked for and ran a lot of their businesses, you would never know the financial side of where that business was at. So as the employee, I'd come in, or the manager, and I'd believe that I was doing all the right things, but I never got to have an overview of what was going on behind the scenes financially. So what we do at Yolk Group is that we are very transparent with all our figures to a certain level, and depending on what level of management you are. But for instance, all our managers, head chefs, baristas or head barista, and a supervisor, they all have the ability to forecast on a week-to-week basis on what their costs will be, so your cost of goods, and what your wage costs will be. Now, also to a point, sometimes we go 2 weeks out. Now, those figures are then based off year-to-date data, so data that, this time last year you did X amount of money. So we would estimate that we're either going to do the same or potentially 5% more. We also factor in weather. And then the manager will create their own little forecast and spreadsheet that then our operations managers will sit with them on a Monday morning and go through and check off that fits within the criteria of how we operate our businesses. There's a lot of detail to it. Some people love it, some people hate it. But what it does do is guarantee that gives us some guarantee that we would know where we're going to be at when the following Monday comes around.
Wow, that's so interesting. So your managers are sort of ahead of where you were when you already became an owner of a business in terms of having that oversight and that ability to think in those ways.
Yeah, leaps and bounds, absolutely. And I've had a lot of conversations lately. We've just done a round of appraisals with all our managers. And I found myself saying, I know that from an owner that we do put a lot of pressure on you as the shop manager. But what I can guarantee you is that whether you're going to work with us for a long time or you're going to leave and go and open your own venue, I'm not only going to be able to teach you how to run a successful business from a service point of view, but financially, we're going to give you all the tools. So if you want to go it alone, take what we're doing, you know what I mean, and copy us, because I can guarantee you some form of consistent success if you follow that criteria.
So I can see how you're building, great future managers, future owners, but how does giving people this information help your businesses week to week?
So I think it works in the way that, because we then produce the results back to them. So if I'm a manager, and this is what most of our managers, they really love seeing that what they're doing, not only from like a service point of view, which is one of the main values of what we do, but financially they're running a successful business, and they're seeing the rewards, they're seeing the figures come in line with what they're predicting. They're seeing the revenue increase or stay the same. So I think that motivational piece that they're doing really well, and they're growing their skills week in and week out, I think that's a huge what we're seeing is that's a huge motivator for our shop managers and leaders.
And do you also find that perhaps because they're skilling up and learning more all the time, that they are able to feed back to you with ideas about how to further improve?
Absolutely. That's the other thing too, that we're not, what I think one thing to learn too is that as an owner, sometimes you have to put your ego aside, and that we don't have all the answers, and that especially as a group that we are now, we're not as hands-on on the floor as we used to be. So another thing we say is like your input to what we're potentially telling you to do is so valuable, because we could set some unrealistic targets or ask you to do things that just do not fit or do not work within the day-to-day. And that's why we're finding now that when we're having these one-on-one chats every Monday, that the feedback we're getting, it's more of a negotiation. Like, yes, can you do that? Yes, we can. And, we're getting closer and closer to our results each time.
Yeah, so interesting. And what about the way that enables staff members to deal with the public or deal with other staff? Do you feel like I don't know, having perhaps a greater sense of ownership over the business's trajectory gives them a different way of interacting with the people around them?
Absolutely. It gives them way more context with staff members. Not so much on a well, actually, yes, on a customer point of view, you'd say, yeah, because if a customer is potentially complaining or, is unhappy, or the knowledge is power. So the more information that you're provided with as a store leader or manager, the more ability and confidence I think you would have to explain it to floor staff or kitchen people or the customer to a certain perspective.
Okay, so Kieran, I feel like you've talk to us about staff, and we understand a bit of training. I can imagine how that filters through into other types of training. But let's talk about costs, because that is a killer for people at the moment. Everywhere they look, some key produce has gone up, or it's the gas, or it's the electricity, or it's I don't know, whatever it is. The rent goes up. Like how do you deal with ever increasing costs?
I think the way that I would say that we do it, being able to look at it on a week-to-week basis, really helps us gauge, where we can or where we have to fix or tighten up on things to compensate for the ever increasing utilities or whatever else may be going up around you. For instance, of late, there's been a wage increase from Fair Work. So we spent a lot of time looking at our books, because there's only a certain pot of money, obviously. So it's like, okay, well, you can't obviously not pay people what they need to be paid. So yes, those percentages are going to increase. So looking at your spreadsheet or your weekly numbers or whatever it may be, where within this area can we look at cutting some costs to compensate for the new costs that have been put forward from Fair Work, and having the ability to look at that in its truest form, I think is what helps, or what would help business owners as well.
What sort of stuff are you talking about in terms of, reining in? Is it the garnish on a dish? Is it having 6 staff members on instead of 7? Because I think a lot of businesses look around and they're like, I feel like I've cut all the fat. Like, where do I look next?
I'll give you a great example. For instance, grease trap. So we were using a grease trap company, and that company was either bought out or another person contacted us. And they're just like, hey, how much, do you pay currently? Okay, we'll beat that price by $200 per clean. So I was like, well, they're like, okay, you take them through. So instantly, now look, off the top of my head, I can't tell you how many times we're cleaning the grease trap, but, say that's $400 saved per shop per year. That works straight away. Works for you straight away. We talking about sort of cleaning within our kitchens, when you have your exhausts clean, we found another system where we could save, I think it was $100 a week off all shops. So, you times that by 52 weeks, that's a certain portion of savings. We also did, you rightly said, we looked at our garnishes on our dishes. Now, I've fought this for the best part of 2 years that I never wanted to change them. But once again, we looked at that, and we've halved our bill on garnishes across our dishes, with to no effect to the food. So it can seem like micro details, or that you're really nitpicking, but if you look at it across a year and how much it's going to save you, that all helps with your bottom line, or being able to pay for what you need week in and week out.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of those examples are just, not the ones that you'd necessarily think of first, because they're not those daily invoices or weekly invoices that come in. Sorry
to interrupt you, but the other thing too that I'm very cautious of is that you can't, and most people would just say, we'll put our prices up. We'll keep putting our prices up. But we can't. We want our businesses to be affordable and approachable. And there's only a certain limit you can go to where, it works on a menu format. I don't want to be charging people $30 for eggs on toast. or some other absorbent amount, just to compensate for things that I could potentially save, which won't affect our product that we serve, and that probably what keeps customers coming back for value.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, some people feel like they don't have another option but to raise prices, and that's understandable as well. But I think affordability and cafes sort of have to go hand in hand.
They do, yeah, because I think I sort of think, as opposed to a restaurant, cafes are going to be the last thing that you give up on, on your morning coffee or your eggs on toast or, your special little weekend visit. And it is tough out there, it's really tough. And if we continue just to put our prices up with no thought of those who have supported us over so many years, I think, we'd start to see the effect.
What about the atmosphere that you create, the fit out, what you're prepared to spend on that? It's probably a good time to ask you this as you're opening a new venue thinking about having it ready for nights as well. Do you feel like, do you have to throw the whole box and dice at an interior?
Well, we put our foot in it because, you've been to the cafe in Moonee Ponds and it's beautiful. So to go and build another cafe that doesn't look like that is challenging. But no, I think that's something that we really, you've obviously been to our spots, so we really value the experience of when you come in. And I think the design and the aesthetics of the building plays a massive part in what we do. So it's probably one thing that we don't really skimp on. I think what we've gotten better at is budgeting and learning the true cost of what that'll be. And also trying to make it, actually in the case of Ophelia, trying to make it more timeless, that the design will last for a long time, and it's also not going to feel like a cafe, that it'll feel like something that you want to be in day and night as well.
So you keep an eye on what other people are doing, and as you say, you've listened to a lot of these conversations around the state of hospitality. What kinds of things do you see around you that you find really heartening, and what do you find concerning or worrying?
The amount of sandwich shops. Does Melbourne need any more sandwich shops? No, look, I think in all honesty, I don't get out as much as I should, because I'm now a father of 4 kids. So I'm not whining and dining like I used to. But I think the produce side of things is what probably really excites me at the moment. And for instance, for Ophelia, where we're dealing with, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Natura, who deal with a lot of local farmers from around Victoria and across the border a little bit. And just, I've been for the past 4 weeks just tasting their produce and looking in what they do and their theory before what they do. I think that is just super exciting, and being able to showcase that across our menus is something that I'm really, really loving. The other part I feel that maybe is deterring me around our industry is sometimes the negativity that you find, mainly maybe on social media, that, people will be trying to put ideas out there of how to fix the industry. And those that are doing that are harshly criticised or, called wage thieves or, I find that very disheartening, because unless you worked in this industry, and I've been in it for maybe 20 years now, you don't realise how much it changed and how much of a struggle it is. And not everyone is that character that you think they may be.
I think it's important that we can have open conversations about things like, wages, and whether wages for a certain category of employee at a certain time are, perhaps unsustainable for certain types of businesses. I think to not be able to have those conversations is not the answer, that's for sure.
That's right, yeah. And, just because you're having that conversation doesn't mean that you oppose that view. I think any small business owner, whether it be in hospitality or any other field, as my brothers are in construction, that they really feel the pinch, and that everyone's feeling the shortage of skills and, the higher costs, not just in wages, but across the board. And being able to have open and honest conversations about that and not be ridiculed is something that is disheartening about, the industry at the moment.
Back to your point about Natura, when they launched in Melbourne, I guess between 1 and 2 years ago, I want to say, we had a chat to Franco Fabini, the founder and CEO of Natura, on the podcast. And I was pretty skeptical about it at the time, I have to say. I was just thought, what's different about this organisation that aggregates orders from smaller farmers and gets them out mostly to restaurants? But I think it's been a real game changer for a lot of independent restaurants in Melbourne and independent farmers who are able to get their produce to market, according to the micro-seasonality of some of the ingredients they're growing.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. We looked at a list the other day, and there's something that's only in season for 4 weeks. I was like, okay, whenever that comes in, I want to take that and I want to do something really exciting with that and talk about it and share that with customers. I was even looking at the list. My brother lives out in Keilor, and there's a farm behind where he lives that is on that list. I was like, oh my God, I know where that is. And those are really fun things to be able to tell that story and convey that to a customer. And I know if I was a customer, I would get so excited about that. On top of that, it tastes amazing. The flavor you get from those smaller producers blows me away.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's really excellent. And also the fact that they are moving towards recyclable crates to deliver the produce is excellent. So I think it's a really good example of people doing things differently and it actually being a massive positive. So Kieran, what would you say to a cafe owner or perhaps a manager who was feeling like things were just not on track with their business? What do they do in a practical sense, and what about mindset? Because that is so important.
It is, yeah. And, if I was an independent owner now and I was sort of back where I started, I would look at it as in, okay, step number 1, what do I need financially, or how much revenue do I need to just break even? What is my break even point? Including paying myself. What would that look like? Hypothetically, say that's $36,000 a week. Okay, so what steps or what do I need to put in place to be able to make that reality and make that work for me? What can I afford within that revenue stream? What can I afford? How many front of house can I afford? A barista, a head chef, or as the owner, what do I need to pick up and do? I would also say make sure that you can see where you're at week to week. Knowing that, okay, this week I made a loss, or this week I made a profit, or this week I broke even. I would then say, if you're wanting to work yourself out of a business, once again, you need to look at, okay, well, how do I get myself out of working every weekend? What does my business need to look like to be able to support that next step? And then the mindset is that, look, I'm a very competitive person, so it made me want to really be able to achieve those targets. But I would also say be very fair on yourself. You're going to get it right sometimes, and you're also going to get it wrong. But that's not a negative thing. That's just it's just a learning curve. And as long as you're not continuously making those errors, it's just a little bump in the road, And if you have a clearer picture of where you want to be within 12 months, or what shape your business wants to be within 12 months, that is a great start. And then once you have that vision, share that vision and communicate that vision clearly with those who work underneath you and who help support your business. Because a happy culture or a group that really understands your vision is then only going to be able to convey that vision and feeling to the customers. And then once you have good customer support and consistent customer support, I think you're guaranteed some form of success.
Oh, love that. Sounds very organised and calm, which I like. What about if you're a manager and you're not getting that visibility over, the the ins and outs and the targets. Do you think it would be fair for a manager to perhaps ask an owner if they would be willing to share some of that so that they could be on the same page and work towards the same goals?
Absolutely, I think so too, because I think that's what potentially gets a lot of, hospitality places in trouble, that the owner is potentially embarrassed or too afraid to ask for help or to be very vulnerable and say to the staff, look, this is where we're at, or this is why we're making these decisions, or how are you guys feeling on the floor? Is there anything I can do to support you? And communication is always a two-way street. It needs to come from both parties. And there are some managers that absolutely love working within their chosen shop or cafe or restaurant or whatever it may be. And I think if you love it that much, there's no harm in asking the question of, hey, can I see where we're at week to week, or is there any way that I can help support you or better understand where we're at financially? And then you can even add in advice to that. I think being very open and honest with each other is definitely a positive.
I think, so many people talk about front of house, especially not seeing hospitality as a career. But I feel like with some of that extra information and adding those other layers to the role, that people couldn't help but see it as, honourable and proper thing to do with their lives.
It is, yeah. And, I had that realisation when I returned from the UK and I started working at what was then Taxi Dining Room. And I remember having a conversation with my mum after a shift once, and I was like, I can actually really make a living out of this. Like, this can actually be something, that I can dedicate my life to. So I think you're always going to have those people that work for you, or you're going to be one of those people that are going through uni and you might only want your 2 shifts a week. And that's absolutely fine. And the business can accommodate you and do that for you. But then there is those lifers out there, I think at the moment we've got about 8 of those people who work for us who genuinely want to make hospitality a career of theirs. So my responsibility as an owner and an operator is to support them and give them as much information and upskilling as I can to help fulfill their ambitions.
So, Kieran, how do you feel about life at the moment? You've obviously got a lot going on with 4 kids. My goodness. You're about to open the 5th business. You've got all these people that are relying on you, that you're, coaching and mentoring in their careers. How do you feel about everything?
It's a lot. Like, I won't lie to you. It is it's a lot to do, but I think I love the pressure of it all. And it's what sort of drives me to keep going, and knowing that, on a personal level, I have a family to support, but also on a business level that not only I have 2 other business partners who I'm accountable to, I'm also accountable to the 100 employees that work for us now, and that the vision and the thing that we've created, we've got to be able to keep that going. So this is nerve-wracking as it is, and even opening a new business where we're going in a total different direction and out of our comfort zone to a certain degree, those things are nerve-wracking. But if you're not confident and you don't have the belief in what you're doing, you would never do it. So I'm quietly confident. The four kids at home is a challenge too, but
Business could be more relaxing than that at times.
Yeah, it's almost like a break. I wanted to ask you though, if you don't mind, like, what's your feelings on the industry at the moment? Because you're a lot more around it than I am, I guess.
Look, it's such a mixed picture. I think it's almost postcode specific. Some businesses are really feeling the pinch, and as we know, some businesses are closing. And I think winter generally is a quieter time. As I feel a little bit more sun on my face, I'm hoping that spring brings hope and spending, and that it will be a time of more optimism. I think overall the industry does need a bit of a shake-up, that there have been too many restaurants, and you never want to hear of an individual business closing, because that is always, or mostly that's a story of, hard times and heartbreak. But I think, if you look at it more broadly, if there are fewer restaurants and, the great staff are shared between them rather than spread more thinly, and customers have a bit less choice about where they spend their money, then hopefully that works out better for most people overall. So I don't know, I'm generally an optimist, but I'm very sensitive to the really tough stories that I hear from people all the time. So I overall believe in hospitality and I believe in restaurants, and I think that will never die. Takeaway just does not excite me. I think being in a room, seeing how people create spaces and bring their intentions to life in a space around food and wine and cocktails and a feeling like that, for me, I can't imagine ever being tired of that. That to me is the best way for me to spend my money. So I'm into it. I love it. I love the creativity. I love the endeavor. I'm humbled by the passion that people put into their businesses. I'm an optimist by nature. So.
And you know what's amazing? That all those things you just said too about the creative stuff, and we're in that, I call it the creative wheel at the moment. All those things started as ideas on paper, or a written idea or a conversation. And then that conversation becomes, for instance, a dish or a food. And then, phase one of what that dish was to its final result is so vastly different, And seeing the joy that idea on paper then brings a customer or, in your case, yourself, is for me as an operator or, as our chefs, it's very, very exciting.
I love it. I just can't believe that you can just walk through a door and into a world that someone has created, and that they bring, all their history and culture or their crazy ideas or, the fruits of their collaborations, and they just make stuff. How lucky do I feel just to be able to, all I need to do is walk through a door and just be absorbed into it. So, yeah, I'm open and hungry for it.
Yeah, amazing.
Kieran, great to chat to you. We might have to make this an annual event on the podcast and keep catching up with you. Good luck with Ophelia. Feel free to let me know where I can pick up a bucket of broth.
Yeah. You've got my contact, so just text me and we'll drop it around. We've got a van. We'll do a personal delivery.
Okay, and I'll catch up with you. All the best.
All right.
Thank you.
See ya. Bye.
This is Dirty Linen, and I'm Dani Valent. We air the issues that the hospitality industry finds hard to talk about, hearing from different people with unique perspectives. We want to hear from you as well. If you have something that needs to be said about a topic, get in touch so we can include your perspective. Contact us at dirtylinenat.deepintheweeds.com.au or hit us up on Insta at Dirty Linen Podcast. We can't wait to hear from you.
This